My theory on why these are considered scary cards is because it offers us the opportunity to actually make a big change. And big changes can be really scary, even if you feel excited. Even when you're excited for a big change, normally there's still a part of us that is like, but what if? Welcome to Magical Reawakening Radio. I am your host, Megan, and I am so excited you're here. Welcome back if you've been listening, watching, enjoying, and welcome if you're new. I am so excited that you have decided to stick around and see what was going on today. Now, today's episode, I am going to talk all about what others might consider scary cards inside of the tarot. You know, the ones that get pushed around the most when it's like, oh, well, tarot is just demonic and tarot has all these scary things about it and it's going to predict the worst things that could happen in your life. And we're going to talk about that because that's not how I read tarot at all. And it's fun to think of the spooky cards in the sense that it is October while I'm recording this, and it is spooky season, and it is a time where we're starting to realize that it is getting darker for longer periods of time during the day. And so it starts that cycle of really coming to terms with the fact that there are parts of life that maybe we aren't as fond of, let's say. So I feel like part of the reason why October is our time for tuning into this spooky cycle is partially because we do realize the harvest has ended. We're pulling everything out of the ground. Things are getting colder. It's getting darker here in the northern hemisphere, right? And so it is a time of people really realizing that life doesn't just go on indefinitely, right? And so when we have Scorpio season, which the sun has moved into Scorpio as I'm recording this, our Scorpio card is death. Now, I talked about death a whole bunch in the last episode because I wanted to prepare people for the fact that the sun is moving in. I am releasing this on Friday, so we'll have had the sun in Scorpio for a couple days at the time of this release. And so the thing to know about these cards is that they're not necessarily scary in the sense that they're going to predict bad things happening to you. The reason I think that people think they're so scary is because they predict or remind you that there are things that you may not have full control over. They're about cycles and about things that you feel like you can't control that end up happening anyway. So the ones that I want to talk about today are, we'll touch a little bit on death again. Remember, you can always listen to the other episode, watch the other episode that goes deeper into death. I'm not sure how deep exactly we'll go. We're going to talk about the Devil card. Again, some scary imagery there. We're going to talk about the Tower card, which happens to come right after the Devil card, and we'll talk about that. And then two minor arcana cards that I want to talk about as well that I feel like can show up. And maybe if I've got time, we'll do a third one. But for sure, I want to talk about the Three of Swords, which I think sometimes people get really worried when they see the Three of Swords show up. And then the Nine of Swords. And we'll talk a little bit about why I think it's the Swords cards that show up in this way. The other card that I'm thinking is the Five of Pentacles. And you know what? Why not talk about that one too? Because then that balances out. We got three majors and three minors we can talk about. So that's the Five of Pentacles. And we can talk about why I think that shows up as a scary card too. So let's dive in. So we'll do in our order here, our chronological order. So if you are familiar with the major arcana, we go from 0. 0 is our full card. And then we go all the way to 21. 21 is the world card. And there is a concept that the Fool is actually traveling through each one of these cards in a journey, right? You might be familiar with the concept of the hero's journey. And so there's this idea that the Fool is traveling through and they're learning things about themselves along the way. And as they journey through the major arcana, they are gaining information about themselves, they're understanding, they're going through trials, and they're really able to evolve themselves to the point where they now have learned something really great about themselves. And that's when we get to the World card. And then, because tarot is a spiral and life is a spiral, we end up back at the beginning again with number 1. So the journey never really actually ends. We're just finding ourselves back to learn new things with the knowledge we have now gained along the way, right? And so I'd like to look at these scary major arcana cards in the order that they show up. So we're going to start with Death. Now, as I said, I talked about it in the last episode because Scorpio season, which is where the sun is now, is connected to the Death card in tarot. Now, Death. If you are listening to this on the audio version, we have a skeleton in a suit of armor riding a white horse. Okay. He is also carrying a flag, and this flag has a rose on it, which is white. Now, this is actually a callback to, if you know what the Fool card looks like, the Fool is actually standing on a cliff, and in his hand, he is holding a white rose. White is the idea of connection to spirit. And then it's also the idea of possibility. So when we have white, it is a blank canvas, right? We have purity, we have the ability to move in all sorts of directions, okay? And then you can see that with the skeleton being on a white horse, again, we're talking movement. So while so often, if we think about that, so often we think about death as being the end of a situation. And it is, on one sense, but there is movement associated with this card. Any card that has a horse in it, there is movement associated with that card. There's something happening to move us along, right? And so we are being offered, when the Death card shows up, the opportunity to remember that with death comes this clearing. We are then ending a cycle so that a new cycle can begin, right? And so that's what I talked a lot about in the last episode, was this idea of death is not showing up because something is dying and that means you're no longer having access to it. Sure, that's what happens to us in the sense that we no longer can physically interact with something if it were to die, okay? But when we think about what that means for the next phase, it's a clearing out. If you believe in multiple lives lived, right? Let's say that you believe in the fact that our soul can come back, okay? So death is the idea of we're shedding one body to be able to then move and start life anew, if we are talking about spirals. If instead you think this is the end of it all, that works for death too, because the idea is that we are done with this journey. We are done in this situation, and then whatever's happening in the world around us, our body will no longer be, it'll go back into the soil, and then something else will grow from it, right? And so the idea of death being a scary card is that we are disconnected from the fact that things actually need to end. And that can be tough when we live so separate from the idea that things actually have cycles where we start, we get a middle, we get an end, right? And we like to believe sometimes that there is no such thing as an end. But having an end is a healthy cycle. We don't want things to keep growing and growing and growing to the point where they then deplete themselves, right? And then we're just still facing death. Okay. So the idea of death as being a scary card because it means everything ends, it's really an opportunity for us to look back into ourselves and say, well, what does happen if this ends? So it is a call when the death card shows up, especially in the way that I read tarot, is the idea of like, when this ends, if we are scared of this card showing up, what does it mean in our relationship to that thing we're afraid that it will end? How can we look at it in a different way? Okay. And so when the death card shows up in the major arcana, it's that time to really go, okay, what's no longer serving me because I need to clear this out. So that's what shows up when the death card shows up. It's this idea of, okay, we're clearing things out because we have learned a lot, right? Death card is number 13. So there's been a lot of progress already from 0 to 13. So now it's like, okay, I am ready to shed the things that are no longer working for me because I am ready to be something new. We shed our identities, we move into something new. Right? And so that is what the death card is here to remind us. It's not here to scare us into we need to hold tighter. It's an invitation to what if you let this go so that you could be something new. That's the death card. Now, the card that comes next in our series of scary cards is the devil. Okay. And so if you're listening, the devil is seated on, he's perched. Yeah, he's perched on a pillar. And on either side of the pillar are two people. Now, these people are called back to the Lovers card, okay? And so we have somebody who has a tail with a flame at the end of it, and we have someone who has a tail who has grapes on the end of it, okay? And they're standing chained to the same post that the devil is perched on top of. Now, the thing about the devil card is that it is a reminder that while we like to place challenges that we have and say that these challenges are happening because XYZ is outside of us, this thing outside of me is causing me to have pain. I have stress because this other thing has happened. And while we are not people who are without interactions of others, right? We thrive in community. Community is a big part of life, and we should not ever doubt that our actions ripple out and cause effects on others, right? Your smile can lead someone else to smile, right? Your bad mood, if you're really angry and yell at someone, could cause someone else to then feel like they're in a bad mood, right? Our interactions with each other do have an impact on each other. However, if you are the person who gets yelled at by someone else, you also have the opportunity to pause and go, they just yelled at me. I'm feeling XYZ thing from that. Is that how I actually want to feel in this moment? And then you get to take an assessment back and be, okay, maybe they're having a bad day. I don't have to have a bad day just because they're having a bad day, right? And so it comes back into ourselves. And so when the devil card shows up, it is a reminder to think about the limitations you have placed on yourself. Because while, yes, we live in a society that feels like often we're not valued, or we are being needing to work extra hours just to have the same things that we used to have without having to work those extra hours, right? But also you can look around and see examples of that not being true, okay? And so the devil shows up as this reminder, not that there's some outside force causing you harm and it is making it challenging for you to actually achieve the things you want to achieve, but instead, okay, I'm having trouble doing XYZ thing. Where can I shift my perspective? Where can I look at this in a different way? How can I approach this from a different point of view? Because when you get that chance to look at the world in a different way, you may see an opportunity that you did not see before, right? Oh, now I can try and do it this way instead, okay? And so the devil, while it can be a very imposing way card, right? The way it looks can be very scary in a sense. That does not mean that we have to be scared of it. Instead, it is again, just like death, what are you afraid of shedding? With the devil, it's the question of where are you holding yourself back? Are there things you actually can change that you're telling yourself you can't? And now allowing that introspection of, well, what if I did this a little bit different? So easy it is to just say, like, I can't change anything about this situation, when really there could be, if it is something you really want to achieve, is there something you can do? Is there someone you can ask help from? Is there a place you could go instead to do this better? Right. And so it's the devil shows up as that reminder of, where are we imposing limitations that don't actually exist? Sure, walls are going to show up, but is that wall actually the wall you need to go through, or can we go around it in a different way? Okay. And so that is the devil. Now, the card right after the devil is the other scary card. Now, I talked about this a bunch because of eclipse season, but we're going to talk about the tower now. And so the devil is card 15 and the tower is card 16. And there is a reason why they are back to back, because the tower is this building that is perched up on a cliff, and there are two people jumping out of the tower because it has now been struck by lightning and it is on fire. And you can see there's a crown at the top of the tower that is tumbling off of it. When you get the opportunity to actually check on your perception of what's holding me back, if you do the work and you say, oh, maybe that's not actually a block, you know what often happens? Things shift in ridiculous ways for you. Now, what you had thought of as a limitation, you had built up this whole situation saying, I can't do that because if, XYZ thing is standing in my way, I can't do that because I don't have the time to do it. Okay. Now, suddenly you find the time to do the thing. Let's say we shifted when we do it. Okay. Now you've got time. And then suddenly things can come crumbling down because you're like, oh no, I said I didn't have the time. I now realized I have the time and I'm doing that thing I really wanted to do. And now things are changing in crazy different ways. Okay. That's why they come one right after the other. Because as soon as you have the opportunity to actually take the introspection and say, oh, maybe I can do this thing. Maybe I have been the one holding myself back. Now you have the tower showing up and going, guess what else we can take down, right? You've taken down this one little thing. You've taken that step mentally to change things. And now we are shifting everything. Now, the reason why the tower shows up as a scary card for people is because it is scary to have your worldview shaken up, right? You have lived with the idea that this is the way things work. This is how it works. This is what I need to do. This is how I'm going to make my money. This is how I'm going to show up in the world. This is my truth. Okay. And we just talked a lot about truth because we just were in Libra season, and the card for Libra season is justice. And justice is all about truth. And it's all about making sure your truth is actually in alignment with you, right? So when the tower shows up, our truths can get shaken up. Our life can get shaken up. Things happen in different ways that we're not expecting them to. But when the tower shows up, it's normally for your betterment. Things fall apart so they can be put back together in a way that works for you. Are we seeing a pattern here? There are reasons why things fall apart. There are reasons why things die. There are reasons why we're being asked to reassess how we approach the world and our mentality around it. There are times that things fall apart, because when that falling apart happens, it opens us up to new and different possibilities. The card after the tower is the star, because then it's like, there's no tower in the way. I can see the stars again. I can see my goal. I can see my North Star, and I can start moving towards it, right? And so the tower, as scary as it might feel, as again, all of these have pictures that feel like they're scary when we look at them. Lots of black, lots of gray, right? But there's also lots of white. So there's lots of potential. And so when we know that that potential is there, we can make those changes. And We like to think that we are ready for change, but sometimes we aren't actually ready for change until we get shoved out of a tower, okay? Sometimes we say we are ready for the change until it suddenly is smacking us in the face and we never expected that change to happen at all. And now suddenly we are staring at infinite possibilities, and it is scary because you know what? Your body is wired to keep you safe. You are meant to be kept safe. You want to be able to not worry about things because you just want to keep existing, which is valid, totally valid. But that means that sometimes we get stuck in these ruts that we want to change and we don't know how to. And so that's when this tower comes. That's when death comes. That's when the devil asks us to reassess our own state of mind and what does it really mean. Okay? So, my theory on why these are considered scary cards is because it offers us the opportunity, or sometimes Valen tells us that this is our opportunity to actually make a big change. And big changes can be really scary, even if you feel excited. Even when you're excited for a big change, normally there's still a part of us that is like, but what if? What if this doesn't work out? What if things aren't as exciting as I thought they were going to be? What if, right? So even the biggest, most exciting change that could happen, you still may feel doubts and reservations about, right? And that's okay. Because again, overall, our brain's job is to try to help keep us safe. And sometimes that can lead to really scary things. Now, I'm going to go through the minor arcana really quick because I don't like to make these too long. So the minor arcana ones that I pulled out that are also potentially scary are the Three of Swords. And I think the Three of Swords can be scary because the idea that like we are in pain, according to the Three of Swords. But the nice thing about the Three of Swords, because we can find a sweet thing about all of these cards, is what I'm saying. The nice thing about the Three of Swords is that it is a reminder that our thoughts often have a big impact on our emotions. And so sometimes we're actually causing ourselves more pain by continuing to dwell on the thing that we are focused on, right? So there are three swords driving into this heart, right? But we're also surrounded by rain, okay? And so there's still an element of thoughts with the clouds. Clouds often symbolize thoughts. When you meditate, often you're asked to like let the thoughts go through like clouds, right? And so it's our thoughts riding through our emotions, okay? And so the idea with the Three of Swords and where we can find some sweetness with this card, even though it feels scary because it feels like we're potentially going to be hurt, is the reminder that the more we dwell on those emotions, the more they can cause us pain because it's a lot of thinking about it. And so it is an invitation to feel the feelings and then allow them to kind of float on through again. Let the thoughts that are causing that emotion to happen, let those thoughts clear up as best you can. Okay. The Nine of Swords, we have a similar feeling, right? We've got 9 swords and we have a person who is sitting up in bed and with their hand facing their hands because they are unable to sleep, right? We've got dark black background. And so the Nine of Swords can feel scary because it's like, oh no, I am overthinking this. Oh no, what will happen? And we get scared of that because we can get in those looping cycles of like, what if, where we're constantly in our heads. But again, the sweet part of that is the reminder. This card doesn't show up to say, get in your head, keep overthinking it. Instead, it shows up to say, hey, babe, are you overthinking this? Are we in our head a little bit too much? Where else do we feel this? Can we work through this? Can we allow ourselves to let these thoughts go so we can get a good night's sleep? and a reminder of where is this sitting for us? Why is this looping? Where can we get this out of our loop, and how can we do that? Okay. And then I also pulled up the Five of Pentacles because I really do feel like when the Five of Pentacles show up, people focus on the people in front of the window instead of the positive message that we can find in it. So the people in front of the window in the Five of Pentacles are walking in the snow. Someone's on crutches. Their clothing is tattered and torn, so it looks like they're wearing rags. Okay, and they're in the snow. Their feet are bare. It's cold. Right behind them is a stained glass window, which we assume is part of a church, okay? Because that's where we tend to find stained glass windows. Pentacles are all about resources. It's money, but it's also things like food and time and our energy spent, right? It's tangible things that we help make us into us and help us thrive, okay? And so they are walking past a place where they can actually find space to be safe, even though they are definitely not in that space right now. So in a similar way, when the Five of Pentacles show up, the question is, where are you not seeing the support that you actually have available to you? Churches have normally have some sort of food bank. They normally have some sort of place that you can be warm. They have people who are supposed to care for you, right? And so they have the ability to potentially go into this church and get out of the cold and find some food and find some warmth and rest, right? And so when the Five of Pentacles shows up, for me, it's not a, this is bad times ahead. This is more of a, hey, if you were feeling like you are lacking, find the spaces that actually have resources for you. Even though you're not seeing them, they are available to you. So that is the three most scary major arcana cards. Scary major arcana cards that I think people have a little bit of trepidation about when they show up. And then three minor cards that I think also can cause a little bit of fear about, like, oh, you're predicting bad things. For me, tarot is never predicting our fall. It's never predicting bad things in the sense that it wants us to have bad issues. Normally, when these cards show up, it is a sense of, hey, I can see you're struggling with XYZ thing. I can see that you're struggling in finding resourcing. I can see that you are overthinking something and it's keeping you up at night. We know that it's there. How can we work through it, right? And so that's what these cards are here for, is reminders of, hey, here I am reflecting to you. It's time for a change. Let's figure out how we can get through that change together. Okay? So if you have more scary cards and you'd like me to talk about them, or scared cards that you're scared of, or even combinations, go ahead and comment about that. I'd love to hear about it. I am going to do a workshop on my Patreon about how you can actually work with these cards instead of be scared of them. And so feel free to join me over on Patreon to get that. I will also be doing a month ahead reading on Patreon at the beginning of the month. So that is where you'll be able to see the full reading of what to expect for November. So let's do a card right now, though, as we go into our next week. What energy do we need? What can we be focusing on now that it's Scorpio season, in ways that we can ease this feelings of transition that we are all going through with the changing of the seasons? So how can we find some sweetness in our transitions? We have the Four of Wands. Now, wands are creativity, fours are structure. You can see, if you're watching the video, that we have two people together. They're raising bouquets in the air. The color primarily of this card is yellow, okay? And so, this is the third four I've pulled for this podcast in a row, okay? Fours are all about our structures and support systems. And so this week, as we're transitioning into Scorpio season and as we are really getting into, we've got some, Halloween will be next week. So we've got some fun celebration type energy coming up. So as we are looking at times of ending, right, we should be also celebrating, because what good is it to know that we had this beautiful harvest if we're not actually celebrating the fact that we had a beautiful harvest that we now get to enjoy, right? So find people to be creative with, find people to be in community with, and really celebrate and be in joy with them, okay? And so that is your advice for the week ahead. If you have any questions or any comments, I would love to read them. I do respond to them. I have fun talking about tarot so much. That's why I'm here doing this. And then on my Patreon, I go even deeper into a lot of this stuff. So feel free to join me over there, and we'll talk more next week. Bye for now.